have the lamination department where they're doing some of the smaller parts. And we got the cap right here, but they got a lot of the under deck storage boxes, coolers, fish boxes, things of that nature, and they have a hard top going on in the back. So a lot of that smaller work happens in this area right here.
They come in early in the morning, about 4 a.m. We do that because the particles that are in the air are less, the humidity's right, the temperature's right. So the guys can come in and spray. Not anybody else in the shop is working, creating dust. So we have a better finish. Doesn't get on, when you lay your Joko down, the most important thing is to have your mold perfect, because that's going to dictate how the finish comes out. Do all this all hand. There's no chop here, but they do it all by hand, and all the little corners and nips where the hatches are, the gutters are, and all. So it's very tedious to make sure they get all the bubbles out. We also run a vacuum. We run a vacuum between the part itself and the mold. So as you add catalyst to the resins, it's a chemical reaction. With chemical reaction, it heats up and cools down. With heating, cooling, expansion, contraction. So as it's doing that, it's going to want to move. So we want a vacuum to keep the part stuck to the mold, so there's no pre-release. The molds are designed so it will release, but you don't want it to be too early. Otherwise, you'll get a hook or a bot, something, and there'll be an imperfection in it. But this is the way we're running the vacuum. It keeps it all true to the mold. Most of these guys have been with me, some of them 20 plus years.
Really?
So they know what they're doing. This is the compartment that's underneath the console. So all of our parts are underneath. When you open up the hatches, one of our things is everything is really finished off nice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of our, trademark is even the bottom edges of it, so there's no jagged, everything's finished, everything's clean, simple. There's no trim. We don't have any trim in our boats. All the parts are hand fit. So there's a nice seam versus slapping it together. Even the underside of our gunnels, that part there is when they trim it, they'll hand finish it. A lot of boat manufacturers have a trim. They pop rivet it on there, aluminum or plastic, or they screw it, and that takes the whip out of it. But
so you guys hand finish that bottom, paint that little edge, and
all the way around, and that's kind of hard to do to make sure. You get that saw goes out of control a little bit. Now you got to change the whole dimension everywhere to make it right. But
I think you're putting like some sort of longboard or something, because having that long stretch,
do a little bit of that if we need it.
Keeping that level has got to be a tough undertaking.
That's the problem with the level of quality and the fit and finish that we do here. That's where it becomes the time consuming. And as the parts come together, everything fits real nice. They become an integral part of the boat. And that's also when it gets all bonded together and glassed together, that's what gives it the strength and rigidity. So what happens is between the stringer and the laminates, it's really thick down low. And the way we design the boat is we want a low center of gravity. Our bottoms are solid glass bottoms. From the waterline up, we use coarse. So we want all the weight to be low, like a pendulum. Or a sailboat has it with a low center of gravity. That takes care of the rock. Then we make it as light as we can as it goes up. And that's kind of where the cores come in. The transoms are cored, and I could show you a cutout of that. With the transom cores, whether it's the 35, the 37, or the 41, it's the same laminate schedule. Super strong, and I can show you.
I see the fuel tanks are foamed in, and then you laminate over them completely.
Here's the thing: once the stringers are put in place, then the fuel tank goes in, then it's bolted in place. It has stainless steel factors bolted to the stringers.
Yeah.
Then they're spaced out, and the height is set, and the spacing. Then they come back and they'll glass it, front, back, and the top. Then they come back and then they'll pour, and that creates a cavity for the foam. And then so she's bolted in, she's glassed in, and it's foamed in. And believe it or not, that foam is tough. But that takes all the voids out and takes any air pockets, and it bonds everything together. And it becomes an integral part of the boat. 1/4-inch aluminum, which is a heavier aluminum than most boat builders.
Yeah.
It's got a protective anti-corrosive coating on it. There's also a need. We add another gusset under the live well. So we have 5 of those going across, and then we come back with a lateral stringer, and it ties it all in. So
I think I saw a piece of that on one of the boats.
I'll show you
over
that.
a rigging.
We'll video that over there, but that takes any of this torque comes out of it, or any of this. So there's no deflection. There's no deflection. There's no cracks. So when you see Joko cracks, that means the boat's moving. Joko's very, very brittle. It's for cosmetics, and it's for UV protection from the glass. And it also, but if it moves, it's
because something's been bending.
And that's why if you get movement, then you can see, then that's what makes it crack. You can see some of our boats that are 10 years old, and there won't be a stress crack.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a stress crack on a Bahama before. Now we know
Now,
why. Here we have one of the Bahama Boat Works hardtops. As you can see, they shoot the gel coat, as they told us, at about 4 a.m. So when the dust settles bright and early and the temperature's right, they'll shoot that gel coat, let it dry to a certain point, and then they drop the skim coat. All they're doing is shooting pure resin on there and doing it all by hand. So the tedious part is making sure you don't get any air pockets anywhere, but you can obviously see the end product at Bahama is spectacular due to the love that these guys put behind it. So here we have another section where they have the hard tops being worked on and the consoles. Let's go take a look at this. Okay, so in this area is where you're going to see them working on the consoles, which are 6 different parts from what we understand, all being molded together pretty much to become one. This is the bucket for the cooler, and then you have the hard top over here.
they'll trim this out, and this is going to become the cooler for the underneath the extended lounger. But the same effect. They glass it, so there's your finish. How nice it is. And
That's straight off the mold.
Straight off the mold. So it's only going to be, your finish is only going to be as nice as your mold. It's in here, that insert is going to be glassed and mounted in here and also foamed in. The other thing that goes crazy is on our consoles is we have the inner and the outer liner, and you can see how the two pieces come together, and all this has to be hand finished. Where the threshold is, and obviously when the door goes on here, so it'll be through bolted, etc. But this all gets a bull nose and radius nice, and then they'll have a nice 360-degree O-ring seal there. This is the interior, which when it's set in place, it gets all hand fitted, hand filed. So when it sits down there, and we don't have a piece of trim hiding the joint, it's just glass to glass, nice finish.
Yeah.
So the biggest complaint we got from everybody is, how can I keep my stuff in my bilge dry or my hatches dry? And everybody fought with that. In the old days, we just
keeping water off the Seakeeper nowadays and stuff, which is an issue with Seakeeper.
And back in the sport, in the late 70s and 80s when things were different, the key to a sport fish boat, keep your cockpit dry, is because those hatches just set in there and the weight kept them there. But the secret was a deeper gutter, because when you're fishing, you get all that water coming in there. And it doesn't take much to overflow it, and it just would go over and overflow the gutter, and it would just drip in the bilge. So we just wanted to make one of our biggest things. We said, okay, when the customer got the boat, we took notes on what you like about it, what you didn't like about it. So in the last 30 years, we said, well, I love my boat, Scott, but I wish it had this, or wish it had that. So we improved on it. So every time we designed a new product, we incorporated that, and things that we knew from our own experiences on the water. But the main thing was keep the hatch nice and rigid, so when you're walking on it, it's no deflection. You're not hearing any creaking and cracking. A lot of manufacturers will use a double jointed hinge because it makes it easy to sit and it self-levels basically. But now when you put a hinge like we have, where there's no screws, so it's harder, it's a studded hinge, so it's not just set it in place and put a few screws in it and you're done, you walk away. This is like what you'd have in your front door. It's a single pin hinge, and as you close and open it, it's got to travel properly. And so when you open and close it, the border looks nice and it has a nice reveal all the way around it. So it's a lot more complicated. That's why we produce less volume boats, because they're just more complicated. It takes more skilled labor to put it together. But in the end, the finished product, it's not about getting more boats out every day. It's about putting out each product.
Being proud of the boats that you do put out. Yeah, you do an amazing job at it. Obviously, you've built an amazing reputation by doing just that. So
come out of the mold, and then we'll protect the hull sides, obviously. And there's normally, when it comes here, there'd be a flange, just like the rest of the parts. And the guys have measurements, and they'll come and they'll trim the flange of the whole perimeter. And that combined, because the liner, before the boat came out of the mold, the liner, which would be another, show you something else, but when the liner gets bonded in, anywhere the liner comes in contact with the hull sides, the tops of the stringers, it gets set in place, and then we'll come back. We have special compartments and inserts, and we'll come back and we'll tape everything together, and then we'll run a vacuum and we'll vacuum the two. The liner and the hull now become vacuumed together till that cures. At that point in time, it's almost a one piece, and that's when we can pull it out of the mold, because when the liner's in there, it basically becomes a unibody where there's no deflection.
yeah, at that point, there's no.
Some manufacturers, to cycle the mold, they'll do the part, stringers, bulkheads, whatever, they'll pop it, they'll move it, and then they got to open the mold to cycle it faster. at a
Oh,
former
sure, if you don't have
place.
that structure, you can have a slight
So we,
bend.
30 years ago at a company I was with, you think that the stringers and bulkheads the backbone, and that's what you need. But the boat will come out of the mold because you want to cycle it. You put it on a dolly or a cradle, and the boat will relax. It'll still be semi-green, so the boat will relax. Or if the boat, if the cradle that's on is not perfect, it'll have a little twist in it. And then you try to put the liner in it and you bond it, and if it's twisted, it'll stay twisted for the rest of its life. We've eliminated all of that extra guesswork, because in the old days we'd have to jig everything up and pull it back together to make the tolerances fit. So 90% of the boat is built while it's in the mold, so it stays true to the mold. And we're running a vacuum 100% of the time, 24 hours a day, so it never changes shape. As soon as it comes out, we fly it across, put it on a trailer, she'll slide back in. Like I said, then the flange will be trimmed, then they'll start trimming the other parts and components, and then we can step up. One of the things that really, really, really sets us apart is where the tolerance is. When you see the tolerance is where the liner and the hull come together, and that special bonding putty, and like I said, it's all vacuum. This now becomes all one piece. So a lot of manufacturers, this is what they call a three-piece. So you have the hull, the inner liner, and then when the cap goes on. Some manufacturers have a two-piece process where the liner and the cap are combined. So it comes out over here, goes straight down here, and turns.
Yeah.
That's two pieces, easy to put together. But if you ever
Usually filled with foam or...
And if you touch the side of one of those boats, if you ever seen a boat that's been wrecked and there's no cap on it, you can literally move the side of the boat a lot. So now they rely on that cap to give it structural integrity. Here, you try to move that. Try to move that right now.
No chance.
So this is stronger right now. In this stage, only 70% complete is stronger than most boats that have a two-piece and they're trying to rely on it.
Oh man, it's friggin' rock. It's amazing.
So now not only is the cap, now on the tops of the stringers we use a different putty, and then on the hull sides we use a different putty. We've got about a 1 hour working time with this product, and we got about a 2 hour working time with the other. So we have everything dry fit, everything's fitting nice, everything's good. We hoist it up, got all the crew on deck.
Let's go to town.
We weigh all our materials, so the weight is all the same. We measure all of our catalysts, everything's set up, the temperature, get the stopwatch. We mix a certain amount of time. Guys are up there as the material comes up. They're troweling on. We keep them supplied with all the material so they get everything where they want it. Then the liner will go in place. We got some jigs for that. We have dummy hatches, another piece that goes over there. Then we come back and we'll tape with this 3.5-inch duct tape, and we'll perimeter seal the whole thing. We run regular rigid vacuum with a vacuum gauge, and we'll suck all the air out between the hull mold and the liner and pull down about 2.5 to 4 inches of vacuum, and it pulls it together and it sucks the liner down and it bonds. So can you imagine 3 to 4 inches of PSI vacuum pressure here? It's a vacuum, but it's about -3 or 4 pounds per square inch here, and there's thousands of square inches, so it's a massive amount of cotton. Instead of the old days, we'd be throwing plywood up here and throwing bricks and stuff to put the weight on it, but it's never uniform. So when you vacuum it, you get a uniform pull everywhere. It's all uniform. Literally, there's plywood back there. You can see it deflecting. We've had actually plywood break because the vacuum's so strong. Even though it's only 2.5 to 4 pounds, you can see it deflecting. It's strong. So
we got to see that process someday.
Once that cures, then we'll pull it. It'll fly across the shop, go on a trailer. We'll roll it into the assembly station. Then we'll come back and we'll hand tape. We'll fiberglass the liner to the side of the boat. On the two transom areas, the fuel columns will come in. We'll hand tape and fiberglass the fuel columns to the side. And then up in the front, that bulkhead will be glassed side of the boat. Then the cap will go on. The cap is like a shoebox fit. So if you've got your liner, you've got your hull side, the liner gets fitted in, it gets trimmed, then the cap goes on the outside of it. All three of them get through bolted now, mechanically fastened every 6 inches with this 316 stainless steel, 1/4 20 poly lock, nut and bolt every 6 inches all the way around. You can see. Now it's not, so, and then you come back and we'll bond in glass. So it's bonded in with some special bonding putties, it's fiberglass in, and it's mechanically fastened. So it all becomes one piece. That's why you run these things. There's no reverberation, there's no shimmy, there's no nothing. That's why they run as tight as they do, and they feel really solid.
That's unbelievable. Do you through bolt every single one?
Every one of those. Now there's
Every
a couple
6 inches?
spots where
Oh my Lord.
stringers in this box all gets tied into the transom. So these knees, they take this load. So when you put 4 engines back here and you're running out there in a 5-6 foot seas and those engines are coming out, all that load is like this, a lot of it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they can measure how much real stress there's on it.
No, it's got to be a ton.
So the other thing, this is all solid glass here. We do have a core, but this right here is another integral part. This gets glassed in longitudinally. So now you have your vertical gussets here to tie in for
Right, so you're getting
this load.
both
this
directions.
acts as a, I don't want to use an I-beam, it's not an I-beam, but it's a T. It's tied into glass top and bottom, and that takes any deflection this way. So our transoms don't move at all. And you can see how much glass is back there, and then it tapers out. So the
Yeah, there's a lot of fiberglass back on this
that's
transom.
where you see all the load goes.
Yeah.
Because it's transmitting now to the rest of the boat. You won't see this,
Wow.
the stress cracks you see on most boats. We cut and literally file fit. Everything gets file fit. We use studded hardware. A lot of manufacturers will drop the hole in, put it in place, and then they'll have screws. And they'll either use self-tapping screws, or some of them will through bolt it, but you got a fastener showing. This way, all of our fasteners are welded and studded. So you won't, so your top finish is always. So we try to minimize as many fasteners because you end up with water pocketing, rust. The other thing we use is we use 316 stainless steel. A lot of stainless steel is 318. It doesn't have the same anti-corrosive properties. So the 316 is a better grade stainless. Once the cap is all trimmed, we'll fly it across, we'll set it, and it fitted. And every 6 inches is a quarter 20, 316, quarter 20 nut and bolt, polylock and bolted it together. The finish and the fit is really nice how the two come together. So our tooling is very, very nice. It radiuses back down. Some manufacturers will put a piece of trim, aluminum trim or some trim here, or they'll put a big plate over the whole point because their hull and the cap come together and it's not very nicely finished. Here are the two big pieces. So we will mill and finish the thickness of the transom, and we'll mill and finish the bottom edge of the cap, and the 2 points they're mitered basically, and they come together, and the only joint we have is that tiny little seam versus a big aluminum plate or some kind of trim height. And that's an art in itself. Thruster is.
What is this? So this is a bow thruster cutout?
Yeah.
Look at how much fiberglass you have here.
So you can't count that because it's an angle, but you can count this because it's a 90-degree cut.
Yeah.
So here's where the gel coat, the skins, then we put a putty here. So because the key is you want
straight. Yeah.
that, yep, and then that allows all the laminates. You can see each one of those is hand laid, and there's a lot of them.
How many do you got in here? This seems like.
I mean, you count them, just like
That's
rings on a
incredible.
tree. You can't even. There's a lot of them.
Wow.
But it's
impressive.
about the mass. That's why when you go into the shop and stuff, you're not feeling that reverberating through the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
You're not feeling it in the boat. The faster you go and you get this momentum, that's why you hit stuff, you're like, it's tight and clean.
And if
That's
you
amazing.
make contact with something, you're not sinking.
No.
You can shoot that with a 308 and it won't go through it.
Really? That's amazing. It's got to be 1.25 inches, huh?
It's not.
It's a lot.
Here's where the hull and the liner come together. Look, that's what I showed you earlier. This is the actual thickness of the bottom of the boat. There's your gel coat, your skin coat, your laminate. The bonding this is vacuumed down. Then they'll come back and they'll glass the two together. And then this is the liner that you saw over there. This is the liner.
And the adhesive.
And then they put
trowel
this
set
special,
adhesive.
yep. And then they put this in, and then we vacuum them. Look how the consistency, how nice it is.
Yeah. That is clean looking.
And look how that joint all comes together. And
That's
then
awesome.
the cap will come on here, and then they all three get through bolted. We try to make it as easy as possible to service the vessel. So whether it's an owner, a technician, or a crew member, and they need to get in here to do anything, you can access every part of the boat. So if you need, you can get to your senders, you can get to your fuel pickups, And you can get to any of the other access points, which makes it real nice. We do our wiring harnesses and all our small parts. Pretty much everything is done in-house other than our upholstery, our aluminum leg assemblies, some of the seating. We do most of the colors other than a specialty color that a guy want to be painted, so we won't do painting here. Pretty much everything from a barrel of resin and a roll of glass the whole boat is done right here. It's just a handful of subcontractors,
That's awesome.
canvas people, stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah, of
Other
course.
than that. So our wiring, we use 10-coated copper wire. We have our own, like I said, does our in-house wiring switches, and he does it all in-house. Does a beautiful job. And our breaker panels, everything's labeled. Switch panels, remember I spoke earlier, we have all of our washers are sent out and polished. All of our bolts,
That's awesome.
our mounting bolts,
Look at that.
it takes a lot of extra effort. Our bulkhead through-hole fittings for steering lines. Now this is a two-piece part. This is from Latham. So this is the steering bulkhead fitting. So we screw it, but we get it all lined up where we want it. Then we send it out, we have it welded. You know how many times people see step on them or whatever and they come unscrewed and start leaking? So we have that welded and then polished. Here's a big crazy, this will blow your mind. See this gasket we use for the side door? Probably never.
What the heck is that?
I get this from Cessna Corporation. This is a pressurized gasket, pressurized door for a door seal on an airplane. And I'll take you back and show you, but we have a routed out groove for this. And we bond it in, but it's the only thing that lives when that door sweeps closed, that this stays sealed.
Yeah.
It's got a heavy duty reinforcement inside there. If you really look close, there's a little sweeper seal right there. There's a little bump on it.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing we found to work out.